I'm Elise, 29, a copywriter and the bride they whispered about behind champagne flutes. The ballroom shimmered in soft candlelight, every surface dressed in gold-trimmed elegance. Peonies in blush and cream cascaded from the crystal centerpieces. The string quartet had just paused, the clinking of cutlery slowing to polite murmurs. I stood, holding a folded napkin in one hand and the microphone in the other, in front of 180 guests, some family, some strangers in pearls. My wedding dress hugged my shoulders tightly, too tightly now, as if warning me to brace. My husband smiled up at me from our sweetheart table, blissfully unaware of what was coming. He believed in me. But my parents, they were watching like critics. My mother leaned into my father's ear. He squinted, dismissive. My sister, Camilla, rolled her eyes like she had every time I ever opened my mouth. I cleared my throat. Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us. My voice quivered, not from nerves, but from the weight of unspoken things. I looked around for one reassuring face, someone who knew, who remembered. But my grandparents had passed. My college roommate was at the bar, and my godmother, the only one who'd ever defended me, hadn't been invited. Of course, I said carefully, a huge thank you to my family, who... I paused. Their heads turned in unison. My mother tilted her chin, daring me to say something real. I didn't. I folded. Who made this night possible? Polite applause followed. My smile held like porcelain, but in the silence that followed, a woman near the back called out. That's it. My uncle chuckled. No anecdotes. Not even one about your mom raising you alone while your dad worked overtime. Another voice chimed in. Don't leave out Camilla. She practically raised you. Right. The laughter spread like spilled wine on white linen. And I stood there frozen, until someone hissed from the corner, ungrateful. Then came another, louder. That's what happens when the quiet ones get too full of themselves. I didn't speak. I didn't move. My fingers clenched the napkin. That was when the caterer stepped forward. Not the manager, but a boy, barely 20, hair tied back in a net, hands still gloved in latex. He walked up to the audio table, knelt, and pulled out a USB. And I remembered. 2 days before the wedding, I'd handed him that drive in the chaos of rehearsal. Play this if things get weird. I had said. Now. He inserted it calmly. The speakers hissed. My father reached for the mic to interrupt. But then, December 14th, 2003, my young voice echoed. The room fell silent. Dear Mom and Dad, the recording said, this is my speech from 3rd grade. You didn't come to the assembly, but I'm pretending you're here now. Gasps rose. My mother's mouth opened, then snapped shut. The speech went on, shaky, innocent. My younger voice thanking invisible parents, describing invisible support. I could see my sister's face stiffen as she remembered the year she said, why would they watch your play? It's not even a real performance. Guests turned in their seats. Some glanced at my parents, others looked at me. I finally looked up. This time, I held their eyes, and for the first time all night, no one said a word. Hey, if you're still here, I just want to pause for a second. Have you ever been called ungrateful just for telling the truth? Or made to feel like your story didn't belong at your own celebration? If any part of this hits home, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to stay quiet when you wanted to scream, please like, share, and subscribe. You're not alone. Anyway, back to that ballroom, where silence was finally on my side. The speech ended with my child voice whispering, I still hope you'll show up next time. And someone in the back muttered, "Oh my God." A guest stood up. My godmother. No one had seen her slip in. "I was there that day," she said. She read that to the janitor and the caterer. He just nodded once, unplugged the drive, and walked out the side door. I remained standing, still holding the mic, still in my gown, still alone, but suddenly, no longer invisible. The silence after the recording wasn't just awkward, it was surgical. It sliced through every fake smile, every tightly clenched jaw, and every champagne-fueled pretense of civility in the room. The illusion of the perfect family wedding had cracked, and in the fragments of that glassy illusion, I stood taller. I didn't mean to. I just had no other choice. My godmother's words still echoed. She read that to the janitor. People were turning around now, trying to catch a glimpse of her. She wore navy, modest heels, and an expression carved from quiet rage. The kind only a witness can wear. The kind that said I was there when they weren't. My father stood up. "Elise, that's enough. Take that off the sound system. This is a wedding." But no one moved to help him. No one echoed him. He tried again, this time raising his voice. "What's wrong with you?" I set the microphone gently on the sweetheart table. My hands were trembling, but I didn't let them see it. "You asked what's wrong with me," I replied quietly. "I think I just stopped pretending." Camilla stood too. She took a step toward me like she always had, ready to take control, to smooth over, to rewrite history. "I know what you're doing," she said, forcing a smile like she was scolding a child. "You're overwhelmed. It's your wedding day. You're being dramatic." That word. Dramatic. I turned to her. "You know what's dramatic? Telling a 9-year-old she's selfish for crying when her parents forget her birthday." A murmur ran through the tables. Someone gasped. Another hand slowly set down a wine glass. Camilla's jaw twitched. "Elise, stop airing family things like this. Everyone's watching." "Exactly," I said. "For once, everyone is watching." I stepped back and let the silence return. My husband sweet, quiet, careful. Theo came to my side. He didn't say anything. He just put a hand gently on my back, a silent question in his eyes. "Do you want to leave?" I shook my head. I wanted to stay. I walked past my parents, past my sister, past the shocked guests still holding forks midair. I moved to the edge of the dance floor and looked out. The candles flickered against the golden mirrors, multiplying the chaos. And I said, loud enough for the mic to still pick it up from the table, "I have one more thing to say. Not a toast. Just truth." I turned back to face the room. I wasn't going to say anything. I rehearsed a cute story about how Camilla helped me zip my dress and how Mom made the most perfect cake-tasting binder. I laughed once, but none of that is true. I felt the pulse in my ears, my heartbeat thudding under my collarbones. I grew up learning how to edit myself in real time, to say thank you even when I was forgotten, to smile when I wasn't invited, to clap for everyone else while I stood in the wings. Camilla sat down slowly, her mouth tight. "Do you know what it's like to watch your mother forget your graduation? But remember to post about Camilla's new haircut." A hand shot up from the middle table. "Aunt Sharon, Elise, that's not fair," she said, frowning. "Your mother had a lot on her plate." I nodded. She always did. But I was on that plate too. I was her daughter. I needed someone to look at me the way she looked at my sister. But I got spreadsheets. Or silence. More murmurs. Some shifting in chairs. Some faces red. I saw my mom's face tighten. She crossed her arms, her fingers gripping her forearms like anchors. I took a slow breath. "If I sound ungrateful to you, It's probably because you only saw the party. The photos, the forced smiles. You didn't see the journals, the quiet sobbing. The nights I'd stand outside their door and listen to them laugh at Camilla's jokes, wondering why mine weren't funny enough. Then I looked straight at my mother. I made the honor roll every year. You didn't show up once. I got a writing scholarship, and you asked if it was a real thing. And when I got engaged, you said, "I hope Camilla doesn't feel left out." She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. I'm not trying to humiliate you, but I won't lie anymore. I won't play the grateful second daughter who's supposed to smile while the world gives her crumbs. A slow clap. 1, 2. It came from the back, from Theo's cousin. Then another guest joined. Then a few more. Not the whole room, but enough. I let out a breath. Someone brought me water. I didn't even see who. And then my godmother stepped forward again. She placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "I knew you were brave, but this is sacred. Sacred." It didn't feel sacred. It felt messy and painful and maybe inappropriate, but also freeing. Theo leaned in. "Do you want to do the first dance?" I smiled. "Let's dance on this grave." He laughed softly and led me onto the floor. The band, unsure, began to play something gentle, something instrumental, and slowly, as we danced, the spell shifted. A few people joined us. Some looked away. Some clapped again. But the mood had changed. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about honesty. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. The rest of the wedding unfolded in strange, hushed waves. It was like watching my life rearrange itself in real time. As Theo and I swayed across the dance floor, the weight in my chest began to loosen, not disappear, but loosen, like a knot finally admitting it had been there too long. The music flowed over us, soft and slow. But the conversations happening around the room were anything but gentle. Near the buffet table, my cousin Mark whispered, "I didn't know it was like that." His wife elbowed him and said, "She just said what nobody dared to say." At table 9, 2 of Theo's law school friends looked baffled. One of them murmured, "That was intense." The other replied, "Yeah, but also kind of incredible." I wasn't trying to be incredible. I was trying to stop choking on the words I'd swallowed for decades. After the song ended, Theo kissed my forehead and offered to get me a drink. I nodded and watched him walk off, grateful for his presence. He never asked me to shrink. He never said I was too much or too quiet. Just enough. I moved toward the side of the room, toward the long rectangular table where my parents sat. Camilla had vanished, maybe to the bathroom, maybe to escape. My father was eating a bread roll with the kind of mechanical motion that looked more like denial than hunger. My mother just sat, perfect posture, tense lips, her wine untouched. I stopped beside her and lowered my voice. "You don't have to say anything." She didn't look at me. After a moment, she said, "You embarrassed us." I swallowed. That wasn't my intention. She scoffed. "Then why rehearse that recording? Why prepare to attack your own family at your own wedding?" I looked at her then. Really looked. "You think I planned to play that I didn't want to. I hoped I wouldn't need to. But you all started laughing when I thanked you. Like I was lying. Like my gratitude wasn't good enough unless it came wrapped in fiction." She said nothing, but her mouth pressed into a sharp line. My father finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "You could have talked to us privately." I stared at him. "When between Camilla's promotions at Thanksgiving, when you gave her the head seat and told me to scoot down because the dog needed room." He flinched. Every private moment I ever tried to take was brushed aside. I was just the daughter who didn't cause problems. You don't talk to quiet girls, you talk around them. I felt my throat tighten, but I kept going. If you want to hate me for speaking up, go ahead. But I'm not sorry. A moment passed. Then my mother's voice, cold and detached. Camilla said this would happen. She said you'd turn everything into a performance. I actually laughed. Of course she did. She's always written the script, hasn't she? I walked away before either of them could answer. Out in the hallway near the coat room, I spotted my godmother sitting on a bench, scrolling her phone like someone trying to balance between worlds, this strange ceremony inside, and the world she returned to outside. When she saw me, she stood and opened her arms. I don't have a lot of people, I told her softly. She squeezed my shoulders. That's because the ones you need are usually hiding, but they find you when you finally speak. I leaned into her for a moment, then asked, "Do you remember that play in 4th grade?" She smiled. "Where you wore the paper crown and forgot your lines." "I didn't forget them," I said. "Camilla had ripped them out of my bag the night before." She blinked. "What I found them later in the trash." She sat back down, stunned. "Elise." I shrugged. No one believed me. She said I was being dramatic, and Mom said I probably lost them myself. My godmother shook her head slowly, like someone rewatching a movie they once misunderstood. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I nodded. I just wanted someone to remember. She looked up, eyes clear and sharp. "Then let them remember tonight. Let this wedding be the one they can't rewrite." I returned to the reception just as the DJ was setting up for the party segment of the night. My husband was handing out shots of ginger beer to the kids, and a few older guests were stepping onto the dance floor. Life was finding its rhythm again, but something had shifted. One by one, people started approaching me. Some were warm, others were awkward, a few just stared. My aunt from Georgia came over, patted my hand, and said, "You're braver than I ever was." A neighbor from my childhood street pulled me aside and said, "I always wondered why you seemed so quiet." Even Theo's mother, who had always been impeccably polite but emotionally distant, gave me a look I'd never seen before. Not pity, not pride, just understanding. Then Camilla came back. She marched toward me, heels clicking like judgment. Her makeup was perfect, not a smudge out Her eyes darted uncertain, maybe even guilty. But it passed. She turned and left again, this time for good. Theo came back to my side. "You all right?" he asked gently. I nodded. Not perfect, but all right. The music changed to something upbeat. Guests returned to dancing. The energy was coming back. Lighter somehow, as though truth had vacuumed the air of pretense. And then, unexpectedly, my father approached me. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. He stood in front of me, still taller. Still the man I once wanted to impress with good report cards and choreographed school skits. "I don't know what to say," he muttered. "Try anything." I said. He sighed. "You were never the loud one." I guess I mistook that for not needing anything. I didn't answer. It wasn't enough. But it was something. "I don't agree with everything you said," he added. "But I think I'm finally listening. For a split second, I believed him, not with blind hope, just a willingness to consider the possibility. The night went on. We cut the cake. We danced again. We laughed with friends who weren't pretending. I leaned on Theo's shoulder during the last slow song, and in that moment, I felt like the girl in the third grade recording had finally been heard. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel ungrateful at all. I just felt real. After the music faded and the clinking of glasses turned to yawns and goodbyes, the ballroom slowly emptied. Guests trickled out in their formal shoes, carrying little wrapped bundles of cake and murmurs they probably didn't think I could hear. Some were still whispering about that speech. Others had moved on to talking about the crab cakes or the floral arrangements. That's the thing about truth once it's said out loud. Most people don't know what to do with it, so they pack it up with the centerpieces and pretend it didn't shift the air. Theo and I stood at the doors, hugging relatives, shaking hands, thanking people for coming. My dress itched along the neckline. The tiara Camilla insisted I wear earlier in the day now sat on a table inside. Forgotten. Heavy with pretense. Good night. Elise. The wedding was unforgettable, Aunt Sharon said, lingering on the last word like it was a polite dig. Thanks, I said softly, with a small smile. That was kind of the point. She didn't laugh. Eventually, the ballroom lights dimmed. Theo and I walked hand in hand down the corridor toward the hotel suite they had prepared for us. The corridor was silent, echoing with the ghost of a string quartet and too many decades of swallowed words. You sure you're okay? Theo asked again. I looked at him. You've asked me that 3 times. He smiled gently. You haven't really answered. I paused, stopped walking. I think I'm more than okay. I think I'm finally visible. He nodded. Good. Because I saw you from the first day, and nothing you said tonight surprised me. It just confirmed everything I already loved. I leaned into him, forehead to chest. Thank you for not asking me to stay silent. You couldn't have, he whispered. Even if you tried. We reached the suite. Inside, the air smelled of roses and leftover perfume. Someone from the staff had left champagne chilling on the table, a note reading, "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Adler." It felt surreal, like 2 stories were being told at once, one with petals and pearls, the other with scars and sudden awakenings. I kicked off my heels and sat on the edge of the bed. My feet ached in the way only honesty could cause. Theo removed his cufflinks and sat beside me. Do you think they'll ever understand I didn't answer right away? I thought about my mother's face, unmoved. Camilla's tight-lipped fury. My father's hesitant, half-hearted confession that maybe he'd listened. There was no telling what they'd take from this night. They might rewrite it, distort it, pretend it didn't mean anything. That was always their strength, erasing the uncomfortable. But the room had heard me. People had clapped. Faces had changed. Maybe that was enough. I think they'll try to forget it ever happened. I said at last. But they won't succeed. We didn't drink the champagne. We just sat on the bed, talking about everything and nothing, until the hotel grew quiet and the moonlight slanted through the curtains like a final note. We didn't sleep much that night, not because of wedding bliss or excitement, but because I was replaying everything, every look, every word, every silence I'd broken. In the morning, I checked my phone. I hadn't posted anything publicly, no speeches, no videos, but somehow, the recording had already made it online. Someone had filmed part of it. The clip had spread. A video labeled "Bride Outs." Her family's neglect during wedding toast was already making its rounds, especially on a niche wedding subreddit. Comments varied. Finally, someone says what they've always wanted to say. She's so brave. This is not the time or place. That sister sounds like a narcissist. Was this planned? Because that speech hit too hard to be spontaneous. I didn't respond to any of them. I just kept reading. One comment caught my eye. It read, "I was the quiet one too." My mom never came to my recitals. My sister always got the applause. I watched this with tears in my eyes. Thank you. Elise, wherever you are. I took a screenshot and saved it. Theo sat up beside me, groggy, eyes blinking against the light. Everything all right? I turned the screen toward him. It's out there. Someone filmed it. He raised an eyebrow. Are you upset? No, I said slowly. Not upset. Just surprised it happened so fast. He leaned closer and read the comment I'd saved. He smiled. You've started something. I got up, walked to the window, and looked out over the city skyline. Something felt different in my skin. Lighter. Not healed, but opened. For once, I wasn't just surviving behind the scenes. I had stepped forward. On my own terms. By the afternoon, Camilla texted me. The message was long. Too long. A half apology wrapped in justifications. She said she'd felt pressure to be the responsible one, that I'd always had the luxury of being emotional, that she hadn't meant to overshadow me. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to my godmother with the caption, "Classic Camilla energy." She replied with a single emoji and eye roll. Later that week, we held a brunch with a smaller group, mostly Theo's side. My mother didn't show. Neither did Camilla. My father came, sat quietly, and left before dessert. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. I guess once you stop pretending someone's absence is a surprise, it loses its sting. During brunch, one of Theo's little cousins, maybe 10, maybe 11, came up to me and said, "You're the first bride I've ever seen who wasn't fake." I laughed. Thank you. That might be the best wedding gift I've gotten. The little girl grinned. Do you want to see the drawing I made of your dress? She showed me a rough pencil sketch on lined notebook paper. It wasn't perfect. The sleeves were too long, and the bouquet looked like a mushroom. But the smile on the drawn bride's face was real. Not posed, not painted on. Can I keep this? I asked. She nodded proudly. Back home. I taped it above my desk. Days turned into weeks. The video still circled online, especially among therapists, wedding planners, and family estrangement groups. A few people reached out to ask if I'd do interviews. I declined. I wasn't interested in making it a spectacle. It wasn't a campaign. It was just the first time I told the truth when it mattered. I started writing again, really writing. Not just ad copy for brands, but essays, personal ones, stories from childhood, unfiltered. People began to read them. One day, an email arrived. Subject, your words helped me speak. Body high, Elise. I played your wedding speech for my mother. She cried. We're starting therapy. Thank you for being brave. You reminded me I could be too. I cried reading it. Not because I felt triumphant, but because I finally understood being seen wasn't just for me, it gave others permission too. A month after the wedding, I went back to my childhood house for the first time in almost a year. Not for a holiday, not for a visit just to pick up the last of my boxes. The ones my parents had stored in the attic without bothering to ask if I still wanted them. School notebooks, old trophies, a few faded dolls with tangled hair, forgotten things. Like me, I suppose. Theo offered to come, but I told him I wanted to go alone. He understood. There were some ghosts I needed to face without a witness. The driveway hadn't changed. The same cracks in the concrete. The same wilting rose bush by the mailbox that my mother never let anyone touch. The porch light was still yellow, casting that sickly tint over the front door. My father answered after the third knock, as if he'd been watching from the hallway but needed to decide whether I was worth opening the door for. "Elise," he said. "You look well." "Thanks." I nodded. "I'm just here for my boxes." He stepped aside without a word. Inside, the house smelled like lemon polish and old upholstery. Every piece of furniture sat exactly where it had for decades. The living room rug had the same flattened spots from years of Camilla's heels. The family portraits still lined the staircase wall, Camilla front and center, always a little more in focus than me, always a little brighter. "The attic's already open," Dad said. I didn't touch anything. I climbed the creaking stairs without answering. The wooden pull-down ladder to the attic was still stubborn, groaning with age. When I pulled myself up, the dust hit me like memory, sharp, dry, familiar. The boxes were stacked near the insulation rolls, my handwriting on the sides. Elise, grade 4. Elise, old notebooks. Elise, ignore. I knelt and opened the last one. Inside my 5th grade diary, a purple plastic cover warped by heat. A stack of birthday cards from relatives, most of them unsigned. An award for most improved behavior, which I'd received the year I stopped interrupting Camilla at dinner. At the bottom, I found a folder I didn't recognize. It had my name in neat, unfamiliar cursive. When I opened it, I saw old poems printed, edited, annotated, notes in red ink, circling phrases, correcting meter, and a letter. "Elise, I read your poems. I kept them. You have a voice. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell. My 8th grade English teacher. He died of a heart attack my senior year. I hadn't even known he kept my work. I must have left this behind, assuming no one cared. But someone had. Someone who wasn't family. Someone who saw me." I sat there for a moment. The box beside me, the smell of cardboard and insulation thick in the air, and I realized I wasn't here to reclaim my things. I was here to reclaim the version of me that they tried to erase. I packed everything carefully, not because I needed the trophies or the papers, but because they were evidence. I existed. I had always existed. As I closed the last box, I heard a sound behind me. I turned and saw my mother. She stood halfway up the ladder, eyes just visible through the hatch. "I didn't think you'd want company," she said. I didn't. She climbed up anyway. Slow and deliberate. She wore beige slacks, a sweater without a wrinkle. Her hair was pinned back, severe as always. She looked around the attic like it was foreign to her. "I didn't come up here much," she said. "Too dusty." I said nothing. She walked to one of the boxes and gently touched a corner. "Camilla's always been better at making noise. You were easier to ignore," I said flatly. She didn't deny it. That surprised me. "I've been thinking about what you said," she murmured. "At the wedding. And the recording." I sat on the wooden beam, hands folded. "I wasn't trying to destroy you. I just wanted you to hear me. For once." "I know." She looked at me then. "But you didn't let me respond. I didn't think you'd want to." "I didn't," she admitted. "At first." She paused. "Camilla's furious. By the way," she added. "She says you made her look like a villain." I sighed. I didn't need to make her look like anything. She did that herself. She nodded once, then said something I didn't expect. "She's always been afraid of you." I blinked. What she knew, you were smarter, quieter, but deeper. She had to work for praise. You just earned it without effort. That frightened her. I shook my head. Then why reward her for everything? Why center her in everything? Because she needed it. And because I was afraid too. Her voice cracked. Barely, but it cracked. Of me. Of losing control. Of not knowing how to love two daughters differently. I gave her more because she demanded it, and I gave you less, because I assumed you didn't want anything from me. I stared at her. I was 9. I said, "Of course I wanted something. I wanted to be seen. I wanted you at the spelling bee. I wanted you to say I looked pretty without comparing me to her." She closed her eyes. "I failed," she said softly. "I see that now." A long silence followed. Just the soft creaking of the beams, the hush of old insulation. Then she asked, "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said, "but I don't trust you. Not yet." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." She didn't apologize again. And I didn't ask her to. Some wounds don't need apologies. They need accountability. Time. Proof. We carried the boxes down together. She didn't say much else. Just helped. In her quiet way. When I walked out to the car, she followed. Before I opened the trunk, she reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I haven't opened it. Your godmother gave it to me the morning after the wedding and told me not to read it unless I really wanted to understand." I took it, tucked it into my bag. That night, I sat at my desk and opened it. Inside was a photo. Me, age 11, sitting on the edge of the stage after a school recital. Crying. Alone. My costume was crooked. My cheeks were red. The auditorium was mostly empty. And beside me kneeling was the janitor, handing me a paper towel. On the back of the photo, my godmother had written, "This is when I started loving you like my own, because you needed a mother that night, and no one else showed up." I cried. Not from pain. From recognition. From remembering that I wasn't crazy. That it happened. That someone saw me. I taped the photo beside the drawing from Theo's cousin. 2 girls. One crying on a stage, the other smiling in a dress. Both of them, finally seen. The wedding video eventually made it into a local news segment. A brief clip, 30 seconds. Tops aired under the soft-voiced headline, "Bride's Unexpected Speech Sparks Family Reckoning." They didn't use my name, but people still found me. A former classmate messaged me on Facebook. A professor from college sent an email. Even a girl from middle school I barely remembered commented on one of my posts. I always knew something was off. I'm glad you said it. But the moment that settled deepest into me came a few weeks later, quiet, unfilmed, unnoticed by the world. I was walking through the park near our apartment. Late autumn had pulled the leaves from the trees, and the air carried that smell of wet bark and possibility. I had my scarf wrapped tight, a takeaway coffee in hand, and my thoughts drifting somewhere between writing deadlines and a half-finished text to my godmother. I didn't notice the girl until I nearly tripped over her dog. "Sorry," I said, stepping back. The dog, a shaggy little mutt with bright eyes, wagged its tail. The girl, maybe 19, maybe 20, looked up and blinked. "You're Elise." "Right." I paused. "Yes." She stood quickly, brushing leaves from her jacket. "I saw your speech. Someone in my group therapy shared it. I I just wanted to say thank you." I blinked, caught off guard. "You're welcome." She hesitated, then added, "I haven't talked to my mother in 3 years, but after watching you, I wrote her a letter. I don't know if I'll send it, but I wrote it." I smiled gently. "That's brave." Her eyes watered. "I didn't know you could say things like that out loud and still stand afterward." I looked at her and said, "It feels like falling, but it's also the first time your feet ever hit solid ground." She laughed softly, nodded, and whispered, "Yeah." We parted after that. No names exchanged, just a shared moment. It stayed with me for days. Back home, Theo was in the kitchen cooking something warm. He'd become obsessed with soup lately, claiming it was therapeutic. I set my coat down and leaned against the door frame. I met someone in the park who said they were inspired by the wedding. He smiled without turning. "You're becoming a myth." I laughed. "A messy one. The best kind." That night, we ate dinner on the couch, legs tangled, bowls warm in our laps. He put on soft jazz in the background. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. Not approval, not recognition, not even closure. Just existing, present. A few days later, a letter came in the mail. Handwritten, pale pink envelope. No return address. I opened it carefully. "Dear Elise, you don't know me, but I'm Camilla's therapist. I hope it's okay that I'm writing to you. She didn't authorize this. I won't share private information, but I wanted you to know she's been talking about the wedding, about you, about the years before. She's angry, but beneath that, I think she's starting to see the mirror you held up. Mirrors hurt. It may not happen soon, but something cracked open that night. I believe, someday, she may come to you not with fire, but with truth. I thought you should know." Warmly. A friend, I sat with the letter in my lap for an hour. I didn't know whether to feel hope or dread, but eventually, I decided it didn't have to be either. It could just be space. And I had space now. That weekend, I invited my godmother over for dinner. She brought homemade bread, the kind with seeds that crack under your teeth. We sat at the table and laughed about wedding disasters, about people's shocked faces, about how even the string quartet had frozen mid-note when the recording started playing. "I should have recorded more childhood moments," she joked. "You were the only adult who ever showed up," I said seriously. "Even before you knew you were the only one who would." She reached across the table and held my hand. "You made your voice louder than their silence," she said. "That's something they'll never be able to undo." After dinner, she gave me a small box. Inside was a silver bracelet, delicate, etched with tiny letters. I tilted it to read. It said, "I saw you." I swallowed hard. "This is what you said you wanted, right?" she asked. "For someone to say it, without you having to beg." I nodded. "Yes, it's everything." Time moved slowly after that. Weeks folded into months. People stopped talking about the wedding. Other viral stories came and went. Other headlines buried mine, but something lasting grew in that quiet. My writing deepened. My marriage strengthened. And I stopped flinching every time I saw a group photo with Camilla's face larger than mine. One morning, I went through the wedding photos for the first time. Really went through them. Not to find flaws or hurt, but to look. I found one picture, me, standing at the mic. Head tilted slightly, eyes calm. A sea of stunned faces behind me, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking up beyond the chandelier, as if I were speaking to a version of myself that had waited too long for this moment. I printed it, framed it. It hangs above my desk now. Not to glorify the pain, not to remember the performance, but to honor the decision to stand. The world didn't collapse. The family didn't disappear. I didn't burn the house down. I simply lit a candle, and when the room went dark, I held it higher. One day, Camilla might show up at my door, or send an email, or maybe she never will. That's okay. I'm not waiting. My parents still send polite texts, holiday greetings, a birthday card, this time signed. I respond, briefly. Kindness doesn't need to be a door, it can be a window. one you open or close depending on the weather. The little girl who wrote that third-grade speech, I think she'd be proud. Not because her family clapped, but because she stopped trying to earn what was always hers, a place in the room, a voice at the table, an identity that didn't need permission. So when people ask what happened at the wedding, I don't say it was a disaster. I don't say it ruined anything. I say it was the day I said, "Here I am." And no one could pretend not to hear it.